Spotlight you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, that is a lot of me. I'm going to attempt to share my slides as we get started. Let's see if I can find them. Let me bear with me just 1 second. I have so many tabs open. I think that's always the danger. And if I bring this one to the front, let's try one more time again.
And and Beth, would
Always.
you like me to interrupt you with questions throughout, or hold them for the end?
Yes, so I would like, I don't know, let me say it at the outset, this is an encore presentation of what we did in December. But to the extent to which also we have people who are here who joined us in December but have questions that they didn't get to ask at the time, I do want to people to please feel free to raise your hand, put questions in the chat, and you can let me know. I think we'll sort of play it by ear with questions that are really about what we're talking about in front of us. You can ask at any point. And then I know there will, as we've had in the past, be lots of more general questions about AI risk and privacy and the future of the world as we know it. We might hold some of those sort of more philosophical questions for the end so that we can get through some of the very practical discussion we're going to have today. I do encourage you, please, to take advantage of the chat, introduce yourselves to one another, and share your own answers and responses to questions. None of us are experts in these new technologies, which have only existed for a very, very short time. We're all learning as we go, and I'm sure many people here have as much experience as others and different kinds of experience trying these new tools. So please, by all means, share your responses and questions with one another, and we can get some discussion going. If you have a actual question for me, it can help if you just put question on it so that we can see it distinct from the rest of the chat, but Hannah will monitor it. Okay, without any further ado, let me dive in. There are lots and lots of stories every day in the paper, which look something like this. They are what I would call AI doomerist scenarios about the way in which AI will destroy the world, the way in which AI will eat all of our jobs, the way in which the world will end as a result of AI. We are coming at this from a very, very different perspective here. We are here to talk about the ways in which responsible use of AI today, not 50 years from now with when the robot apocalypse will happen, but right now can be used to improve how we serve residents in government. So Hannah gave a detailed bio of me. I wanted you also to know that in addition to my role in academia, I also serve, as she mentioned, in the cabinet for the state of New Jersey, where I'm the chief innovation officer, and as of recently, also named the chief AI strategist for the state of New Jersey, where we have been very much, I would say, out front, embracing the responsible use of AI. And I'm very happy to talk about some of those experiences, not just from my team, but from others using AI for public good in the state. So we're starting from, that's our starting point here, is that AI, again, there are risks and we'll talk about them, but there are also tremendous benefits. And so what we want to do here is to develop enough basic understanding, independent of the jargon and the hype and the acronyms, that we can get into talking about how we can use these tools today. This is the first part in a two-part workshop where today we're focused on AI and its text use cases. And next week, we'll be talking about image use cases. So the tools for both generating and creating content in the sense of text and analyzing text today. And next week, generating and analyzing images. And then depending on timing and discussion, we will talk about risks both this week and next week, and hopefully talk a little bit more about what it means to create an AI-ready culture in your agency. There are a lot of good things these tools can do. And the recent White House executive order from late in 23, this is a quote from that 20,000 word executive order. You kind of needed AI to even understand and read what that executive order said. And that's a good use case for AI. Really, I think strongly made the case, at least at the outset, about the ways in which these technologies can help us to really address and solve urgent challenges. So again, that's the starting point that I'm coming from, but it is not uniform. I would say we're seeing just as many organizations and institutions, whether in universities, in governments, maybe a little less so in business, but in all sectors, that are either banning the use of AI or silent on the use of AI, or kind of the Wild West, no policy, no guidance, etc. We're trying to kind of thread that middle to provide some guidance and training and exposure, and hopefully getting you trying some of these things hands-on. So as Hannah mentioned, there's a lot more content about AI on Innovate US, and coming this spring, beginning in mid-April, will be an extended at your own pace, at your own desk course that you'll be able to take on AI that it complements these kinds of weekly workshops, of which there are quite a number coming up. And Hannah, I hope you'll put some advertising, if you will, in the chat, because uniquely, though everything we do is non-commercial, everything we do is free, we have invited some companies this spring to come and show off their wares, because we think it's helpful to just understand what these tools do, and to have the people who make them show us what they can do as we think about how we can use them in government. However, even though they're talking about tools, and I'm going to talk about a lot of these tools today and show you things like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, the Google Gemini platform, and Google Bard, and a few other things, these are not endorsements of these platforms. This is not meant to be promotion for these platforms, nor can I speak to the question of whether these are tools that you are allowed to use at work. At the very least, I can say you should try the free versions of these things at home. But please do consult with your agency, CIO, CTO, legal counsel, or other relevant personnel about the use of these tools in your agencies. So with that said, let me pause for a second. And Hannah, do we have a poll ready to go, or do we want to do this with hand raising?
We don't have a poll ready to go.
Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to stop share for a moment and ask people to use their hand raise button, which you will find under reactions at the bottom of your screen. If you see the smiley face that says reactions, there's a button there which says raise hand. Looks like this. And if you would just, don't raise your hand yet. Don't raise your hand yet. Put them down for a moment. And here's the question. I want you to raise your hand if you would say you use ChatGPT or something like it every day. So I want to see what kind of, and if you could stop spotlighting me, I'd love to see what the room looks like, Hannah. So, or I'm gonna see if we can pull up a gallery view so I can at least get a sense here. So that's a lot of hands of people saying that. I'm seeing a bunch of hands, at least on the first screen. We've got 7 screens of people, and now I've got 1 screen saying we use it every day.
I see 28 people who have raised their hands.
Ooh, thank you. Okay, 28 out of 174 who are here, more going up. Okay, if we could put down hands for a moment. I'm not going to do as many poll choices as I had on that slide. I want to ask how many people here are in the category of, I've either, two possibilities. You've either never used it, or you've tried it once and haven't tried it again. And I see some members of my own team, so I know they're the ringers in the we've used it, we use it loads category. So I'll give it a minute to see how many hands go up. I see we have about
right now.
An equal number of people who've basically never tried it. And yeah, please do share more in the chat about sort of what your usage level looks like. As we rightly suspected, we've got people all over the map here. The good part about that is we have at least 20 some people here who use these tools all the time. I see David Powell here. I see Star Silva. I know you use these tools all the time. So I'm calling you out. So the reason for that is I really want people to get a conversation going in the chat, because as I said at the outset, I think you can provide a lot of answers to one another. I see some folks from New Jersey Department of Labor, and I know we're using AI with your team. So again, please do share your own know-how about the different things that you're doing. Again, professional or personal is okay too. We'd love to hear about the way you're using it to write bedtime stories for your kids or other things. I think those tips and tricks are always very welcome. Okay, let me go back to my screen share, if I can do that. And we'll take this conversation. Again, this will be, we're doing some efforts at kind of learning hands-on what these things can do, aimed a little bit more at the never tried it kind of category, but I think that will get us started in some interesting conversation. It should go without saying, but just so you know, there's nothing on the record about what we're doing. We record for the purposes of transcription. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions. There are no stupid questions, and they will not be attributed to you in any case. And we really, again, are here to learn from one another. So please, again, these things are so new. So do not hesitate to ask things as simple as, what URL do I go to? Or how do I find that? Or what was that thing that you mentioned? Again, all those questions are welcome. Okay, what is AI? Let's start with a little demystifying of some jargon. And again, I welcome other answers and responses in the chat, but I'm going to give you a definition, this one, not my own, but from IBM. And I like this one because I think the term artificial intelligence, tends to connote this sort of aspect. It tends to bring up these conversations about whether machines are human, whether they replace humans. Again, very interesting set of philosophical questions, but practically speaking, these are just a set of data processing tools. You can think about them at their simplest form, I think, as a better version of the calculator, or a newer version of the calculator, or in the case of generative AI, a newer version of the word processor. And I think if we think about this as just a new kind of word processor, or a new kind of calculator, it can help reduce some of the fear that's associated with trying some of these things. And again, that gets obscured when we start to talk about this question of, is the machine human or not? This discussion about the tools being human have to do with the fact, as we'll discuss more in a moment, is that these tools are just getting better at doing things that typically are things done by humans and that machines haven't been able to do in the past. But I don't think there's anything intelligent about ChatGPT at all. The AI, there's a number of different subfields and methods and tools that AI comprises. Again, it's a set of different kinds of data processing techniques. The one you've typically heard about until generative AI came on the scene, until ChatGPT happened and we started talking about generative AI, when we said AI, people typically meant machine learning. So machine learning, very typically, as I sort of say here in the definition here, it's about accomplishing a task with data that we do by feeding a machine with lots and lots of earlier data of examples of something. And that is really just allows the machine to recognize a pattern and then spot that pattern in a new set of data. So let me explain what I mean by that. Wonderful project from Alert California, UC San Diego, and the state of California. It was featured in Time Magazine's Top Inventions or Innovations of 2023. Essentially, they fed an AI algorithm with many, many thousands of pictures of wildfires. And that allows the software to spot, when shown a new picture from one of the 150 cameras they have set up, to spot a wildfire, to say, oh, I recognize the pattern from what I've seen before. I can now spot a new wildfire. And now, just over the last year, they've had 77 wildfires where the machine has spotted the fire before humans were able to do so, leading to the calling of first responders, and presumably, of course, the putting out of that wildfire much sooner. And the faster we put it out, the less damage, obviously, that we're going to do. Another great civic project called Traffic Jam from a B Corp called Marinus Analytics, funded originally by the DoD. This is a project that takes thousands of examples of ads that have been later identified as examples of sex trafficking, and uses those ads then again to create an algorithm. We're now looking at new ads, and it can more rapidly spot examples and distinguish between normal ads for, let's say, legal prostitution or legal forms of escort services, and what actually is evidence of human trafficking and slavery, and is a tool that is in wide use by law enforcement in a number of different states. So essentially, that whole notion of looking at a lot of patterns, looking a lot of older examples to spot the new ones, is a lot of what we see in the healthcare space that you'll hear most about in the news. So examples being a great algorithm that's been developed out of MIT, again, trained on thousands and thousands of examples of past tumors that were diagnosed as cancerous, now can help predict, spot, and assess future tumors as being cancerous, and more rapidly spot examples, for example, of breast cancer. The Gavieri test, also AI-driven, now able to spot dozens of different forms of cancers earlier than we've been able to do before. Generative AI, I'm going to pause here for a second. Please, questions, comments, don't hesitate to raise a hand, put something in the chat as we go along. Generative AI, a subset of machine learning, but in this case, instead of the past pattern, instead of the training data being thousands of photos of wildfires or thousands of photos of breast cancer tumors, the training data is words, scraping data from the internet and using that to be able to now predict what is the next word that should come in a sentence. So this is what makes it a little bit human, in that a human child learns to speak from listening to a caregiver speak, recognizing the patterns, and then imitating those patterns. We're simply just repeating the patterns that we hear from hearing other people speak, from reading, etc. Generative AI is simply doing that. Billions of words of input. Now it's really good at essentially repeating those patterns to create new sentences and new kinds of content. These sorts of what are also called large language models have been in development for some time, but the commercial tool ChatGPT, which is really what kind of put all of this on our radar screen, and it's why we're here today, it's why we've heard about it, came out about a year ago, last month, December of 23. So the tool technology is really very, very new, and has been on our radar screen only for a very, very short time. It's not the only platform, however, and we'll take a look at some others, but this is the most common platform. And I want to encourage you, as we're going along, as we're talking, to go to ChatGPT for yourself, to try it out. You can go to openai.com, you can go to chatgpt.com. Both ways will get you there. OpenAI is the company, ChatGPT is the product. And you can try it as we go along, and we'll look at some other tools. And again, people should feel free to share their favorite tool in the chat and the kinds of things you are doing. So this is what you're going to see if you go there. You can type in a question. It's a very simple blank search bar, and it will generate content like this question about what is the best pizza to eat in New York City, and other sorts of responses to questions. It is what is also sometimes known as a conversational agent, or a chat bot, something we'll talk about more in a minute, in the sense that it is a very interactive technology that allows us to interact with the computer and interact with text in new ways that we have not been able to do before. But I will mention that there are other, oops, I have to let it play. There are other conversational forms of AI that we're all familiar with. There's Alexa, there's Siri. That's all AI under the hood. That you've used for a very, very long time. Whoopsie, I managed to, let me figure out what's going on here with my slide. Okay, so let me say that this technology is not just text-based, but is increasingly what in the jargon is referred to as multimodal. That is to say, you can talk to it and it will respond to you by voice. So I have ChatGPT loaded on my phone. I asked it a complex legal question here. And what is the rule against perpetuities? I'm going to go forward so you can hear it speak back. It thinks a lot. Okay, so you get the idea. It can text as well as talk. And that's very much why you tend to hear sometimes about conversational agents or conversational chatbots, because you can interact by voice with these tools as well. The language is increasingly, the sound is increasingly kind of human sounding. It's really, really good. And the interaction sounds much better than we've been used to before. Oops, I forgot. Here is my cancer slide here. I forgot that this was coming. So I'll just briefly say here, back to our dejargoning part of the conversation, you'll hear about narrow versus general kinds of AI. Narrow simply refers to the idea of an algorithm or a piece of AI that's designed to do a specific thing, versus more of a ChatGPT, an all-purpose kind of tool, like a word processor, like a calculator. ChatGPT and these sorts of generative AI tools are meant to do a wide variety of things. They aren't just for one particular purpose. But I wanted to just use this jargon for a moment, because you hear about it sometimes and it can really confuse matters. It really is just describing, as the term applies, what the tools can actually do. You'll also hear about supervised and unsupervised AI. I'm not going to spend much time on this right now. I think I'm going to quickly go over this. Please, by all means, more in the chat. But the main thing that I want you to take away from this is that these new tools are largely what we would call unsupervised. That is to say, you don't have to give them all the rules up front ahead of time. So typically with past machine learning projects, you had to tell it, these are all the examples of cancerous tumors. Now go out and spot the new ones. I'm going to train you with, 1,000 examples of, I'm going to tell you which one is the Chihuahua and which one is the muffin, spot the new one. Increasingly, these tools, especially the generative AI tools, are able to work with unstructured data without being told ahead of time what to look for, and are able to spot those patterns, which is what makes them so powerful. This is just a funny meme from the internet, but I think it's a good illustration of the ways in which machines are getting better, maybe even better than humans, in spotting the difference between the Labradoodle and the fried chicken. These are, as much as this is meant to be funny, and it's a funny meme on the internet, these kinds of images are actually used to train AI to be able to recognize the difference, so that it gets better at that kind of pattern recognition. Okay, that was a very, very brief kind of fly through of some of the definitional and jargon that you hear in this space, because I want to move on to talking more about how these tools get used in government. But I'll just see if there's any comments or questions. And again, Hannah, you'll let me know if you see anything in the chat or any hands go up, and otherwise I'll just keep breezing through. The thing we want to talk about today in particular is that with these text tools, there are two major kind of categories of things you can do. One is to create content, and the other, which I think is more interesting, is to analyze content. Some of the content creation I've already shown you. You type in a question, it will generate content in response to a question. In this case, what's the best steak restaurant in Buenos Aires? Really good for travel advice. And you can use it to get answers to questions. Oops, there's sorry, I have to click I've got too many steak restaurants. Let me go forward here. That ability for it to create content offers us the opportunity, obviously, to get help with drafting. So maybe that drafting is, help me write the first draft of a memo that I have to do. Help me write the first draft of a speech that I have to create. I don't have to show you all of those things. You get the idea that it's really good at drafting things. It is also good at doing things like helping you to write things in a clearer way. So maybe you already have some content that you've drafted, like a policy or instructions or a benefit or a service that's described on your website, you can take that text, paste it into one of these tools and say, hey, can you help me to improve the readability of this text? Can you help me write it in a clearer way, in a simpler way? And I really recommend it as that kind of assistant rather than using it to write from scratch. It's really good because you want to get your own ideas out on paper, but it's really good at helping you to improve how you express yourself, and especially how we express ourselves to the people that we're trying to serve in ways that are actually simpler and clearer. Now, this is an example not of the interface from ChatGPT, but from Google Bard, just to show you a different tool. Again, a very similar sort of just fill in the box here. But I said, can you simplify this text? Again, same text we were looking at before, and asked it if it can give it to me in a simpler way, again, which can help us to move beyond talking in legalese and government speak to talking in simpler terms. Here I've asked it, oops, I think this may be the same one. Sorry, I keep clicking on the videos. This one I said, can you rewrite this at a 4th grade reading level? So I can tell it not just make it simpler, I can tell it what I mean by being simpler. So perhaps you want to create content that's going to be more accessible to people who don't have a college degree. Maybe you want the content in another language. Maybe you want the content, again, written for children, or maybe you want all of the above. The ability to create multiple kinds of content in different formats, which would have been much more difficult before because we only have so many hours in the day, now becomes faster with these kinds of tools. These tools are also really good at answering questions. And you'll have heard lots of discussion now and exploration about the concept of the chatbot, which is, again, just this kind of conversational agent or question answering tool. We have a site in New Jersey called business.nj.gov that we set up not too long ago, a one-stop shop for helping people to set up and run and grow their business in New Jersey. It pulls together content across a number of different websites. One of the things we do is we have a chatbot there that is AI enabled, where you can type in your question and ask, how do I set up a business, or what regulation do I have to comply with, etc. What I really like about this, and this will be a topic we will discuss, if not today, then at least next week, is that we're using this to enable the humans at our Business Action Center to ask and answer those questions. So we're not simply fobbing off residents on an algorithm to, that kind of frustrating phone tree experience. You're typing in a question. The humans at the Business Action Center, who are very, very knowledgeable, are using AI to help them get faster at writing responses, but it's overseen by a human. And then the question and answer gets logged in the database, so when someone asks it again, they can get that human-reviewed response faster. These sort of chat bots that are enabling governments to provide 24/7 customer service are becoming increasingly popular as a use of this content generation function. Though chatbots are used not only to help give residents answers to questions, but to help employees get answers to questions. So this is an example from the clerk of Maricopa County, Arizona, where they have a chatbot called Clio that they use internally for staff to get answers to their own questions so they can provide answers to the public. I have a group of students working with the Massachusetts DOT, building an employee chatbot right now, taking all of their internal documents for engineers in the training documents for engineers and using it to create a conversational agent so that new engineers, when they get hired, can ask a question and get an answer to it. They don't have enough senior people to go around to do their job and do the training, so the chatbot really helps new hires get answers to their questions without having to look through thousands of pages of documentation that they don't know how to navigate. So that's a really good potential use to think about, is that sort of internal knowledge base for employees, for call center employees, etc. Tool is really, really good at doing research. And you can use it, the more that you guide it, the more that the questions you ask, or those questions you will have heard are also called prompts. But a prompt is nothing more than a question that you ask it, the guidance that you give it to tell it what content you need. It's very, very, the better you guide it, the clearer the instructions, the more that you tell it, this is what I'm looking for, the better it is at drafting you something. What it is not good at is finding a specific source. So if what you're looking for is like, I'm looking for that one document that I saw on the web about XYZ, just use Google to do that. Just use the web. What AI is really good for is pulling together a lot of different information, synthesizing it, and then spitting out responses to questions or new kinds of content that you're looking for. Now, very recently, and if you were with us last year, if this is an encore for you, you did not see this a couple of weeks ago because this didn't exist a couple of weeks ago. Now, OpenAI and the ChatGPT tool has incorporated created something called the GPT Store. So like an app store that you have on your iPhone or on your Android device, they've now created a GPT Store where you can also get third-party tools that are built on the OpenAI platform. So one of those examples of a GPT has been created by a third party called Consensus. And it is, as it says, an AI research assistant that has hoovered up 200 million academic papers. And when you do a search through Consensus, you're not just pulling from anywhere on the open web. What you're doing is searching and doing research on 200 million academic papers. So I thought we might try this. Let me stop share for a second. It's a good time for any questions that people might have or any comments. And this could be a comment if you've done something for yourself, or you had some different or better experience, or you think I've gotten anything wrong, please let me know. And then we can try the tool. So let me just see if there's anything
I have a question from
on people's mind.
Who's asking,
Yes.
is there a way to ask AI to just use certain vetted sources so it doesn't pull in incorrect, outdated info or mis or disinformation?
Absolutely. And I am about to show you more examples of that is exactly coming up. So let me show you the first example of this. Let's see if I can find, here we go. I think this is Consensus rather than my email. So you should be able to see Consensus here, and we should ask it something. Let's find out. I don't have a demo planned. Whoopsie, sorry, I pushed the button by accident. Okay, there's a demo. It gave some suggestions. Can intergroup contact reduce prejudice? But why don't we take a question while it's thinking? Why don't we take a question from the group? Is there something, a policy question you're looking at, a service question, something that would be interesting to search academic journal articles and find out about, if it actually wants to work? Do we have a question that anyone is working on? Any takers?
None yet. Feel free to
All right,
put
I'm
it
going to
in the
stop it
chat if
anyway.
you have a question that you want Beth to ask Consensus. We have from Carl, how to increase heat pump adoption.
Ooh, okay. How can I increase? I have no idea what that means. Heat pump adoption. Adoption. Can I spell that? Adoption. How can I increase heat pump adoption? Let's see. Okay, starting, thinking. All right, I'm going to always allow it. Just asking permission to talk to this third-party app. It's talk to it. This is, again, a tool that's been built on top of OpenAI's ChatGPT by this third party called Consensus, which is not working. Always good to do demo that fails spectacularly.
We have a couple more.
Yes. I think it's either the tool is either overloaded or my internet is not happy, or or both. I don't think it's the nature of the question. It's not the heat pump adoption. Oh, there it is. It's just slow. There we go. Okay, so now it's giving me some content. Do you know something about heat pump adoption? Does this look good? What I want to point out, though, that's a sort of rhetorical question for the moment, is it's not only giving me answers, and this is back to the question we just have, it's giving me citations. So it's giving me citations and a link to the original source, which this comes from. So that's very, very different than the world of ChatGPT we would have seen even 6 months ago or 8 months ago, where you'd ask it something, it would confidently spit out something that you would have absolutely no idea whether it was true or it wasn't. Increasingly, these tools are talking to the web, talking to specific sources, and able to give you a citation so you can actually track down the original information, which is exactly what you'd want to do if you asked your intern the same question. Star, I see that there's a question.
I just had a comment related to this, and I think you talked about prompting a little while ago, and I just wanted to point out how important it is to craft a good prompt and to know like what are the elements maybe to include in your prompt to get a better response. So I can share something in the chat, just kind of like you can tell these models, for example, it's like, as a data analyst or as a legal analyst, please describe the process you use to analyze it and give it to me in the tone of, like you said, like a fourth grader. So there's a lot of different things that you can put in the original prompt to make sure that you get a very like specified result.
That is true. We're going to talk. Oh, go ahead, please.
Quickly add, I'm going to pop into the chat a link to our recorded session from yesterday, which was with Brandon Bryn from Microsoft, and it was all about writing a prompt for AI. So I'll put that recording into the
learnings from that or summary or whatnot that you want to share, by all means, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to guide some of that prompting. We'll talk a lot about that when we talk about images next week as well. One more quick example on this research front, another example. This one was a request that I got from a colleague that had to do with looking at the database of Supreme Court confirmation hearing transcripts, which is a database that exists from a group called R Street. But I want to show you another tool. This one is called Claude from Anthropic. Claude is particularly good at uploading a PDF. So I asked it here, what patterns can you detect in these mentions of abortion in the hearings for Supreme Court candidates? This was the question she wanted researched. And I was able to upload this very, very large PDF of information. And then it gave me sort of, here are the patterns based on reviewing the mentions of abortion in Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Here's some of the patterns that have emerged. And then I asked it, are there anything unusual? You know, you can keep going. So the question you asked, to Star's point, it's not just about the original prompt or question you ask. It remembers what you asked before. So you ask a question, it gives you a response. You can then say, hey, I'd like more of this and less of that, and here's how I'd like to refine it. And I'm going to show you more examples of that in just a second, but it's really good at looking at including information in a PDF or across multiple PDFs. These tools, and this is back to Star's point again, are increasingly good at delivering more personalized information. So some of you may be on Duolingo, or maybe your kids or you are using Khan Academy in education. What these are their uses of AI are very much around personalizing the content you get to you. So Duolingo looks at how you responded to your last French lesson or Spanish lesson, and then customizes the exercises that it gives you based on your prior response. So they're learning from the responses that you give, and that's also what's going on under the hood with something like a Khan Academy, which is designed, again, to create more customized lesson plans and learning. And I'll show you what this looks like a little bit more. Here's a funny example, but I'm going to show you a little bit more what this looks like in a kind of day-to-day role in government service. This one is from the AI robotics company called General Dynamics. And this is another example of personalizing a robot, the response. I'm gonna. So I'm going to stop that there. It's a very enjoyable video. Essentially, General Dynamics has robots that use ChatGPT for their voice, And what the rest of the video shows you is the different personalities they have been given. So that one is Fancy Butler. There's an Indiana Jones voice. There's a Valley Girl voice. There's all kinds of different personalities. So you can tell it exactly how you want it to respond in terms of the content that it's providing. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the screen share here. So let's share screen. If you can't access ChatGPT from your work at the moment, which I didn't see the full question, but I saw some of it go by, you can also access it on your phone by downloading the app, and you can also access it at home, but we can talk about some of those permission issues more in just a moment. Here is another example, this one this is again not a government use, but I think it might start to give you some ideas for your job. This one is from this morning. My son just went off to take his 9th grade physics final. And we used ChatGPT to say, I'm trying to learn more about different types of energy for a physics test. Could you write me 10 questions I can use to quiz myself? So in other words, instead of asking it for answers, you can say, give me questions. The questions, though, that it gave me uses all the different, it said, what is kinetic energy? How is it calculated? Well, he has to actually learn what is kinetic energy. So we asked it again, this time, give me the names of different types of energy, write me 10 fill in the blank questions, but don't mention the names of the types of energy. And again, it comes back, remembering the last thing it just did, it now comes back with a fill in the blank and doesn't mention the answers. So back to Star's point here, the more that you guide it, the more specific you are with what you want, and you can continually refine the prompt, the better the content is that you will get. Last point here on content creation. Most of us, I'm sure here, tend to think about, when we think about language, we're thinking about English language and words. But there is also the language that computers speak, that is code or software code. And these tools are also really good, again, it's just pattern recognition, at writing software code. So Microsoft now owns GitHub, which is the sort of largest repository of software code. It's where people go to write and to deposit and save and store and the software code that they write. And it has now integrated what are called Copilot features that are helping people to write their code. And in New Jersey, a number of our teams are using Copilot to help them get faster at writing code. Again, it just suggests, like an autocomplete that you're familiar with from your email or from your text messages or your commonly used tools, suggesting, what should you write? It's helping us to get faster and faster at how we create digital services and therefore deliver better services to residents by helping us to write that code faster. Okay, let me pause here to see what ideas people have or questions people have about how you would anticipate using this kind of content creation ability with your teams. Or any other questions that people have or any reflections that people want to share in the chat.
We have a bunch of questions. I'll just share a quick one now, but
yeah, thank you.
The others for later. But Carrie was asking, are there on the sources, are they only open source papers or also paywall papers that are drawn from here?
So that depends on how the tool, what training data is used to train the tool. That is one of the big source subjects now, and why, as I have a slide for later, why the New York Times is suing OpenAI, because of the concern that these tools are trained on proprietary data. So a lot of the data that underlies how these generative AI tools got trained is open data. It is data that's been created by governments, paid for by taxpayers, and made publicly available. And there's a great Washington Post article, which I'll try to put in the chat in a minute, or maybe somebody can find it, that talks about, it's from a couple of months ago, talks about what are the sources of data that underlie these tools. But the reality is they have also gone out, these companies have gone out and scraped data from other sources, and the New York Times and others are accusing them of using proprietary data without paying for it, and now they want to get paid. So there are also licensing deals under discussion by a number of different players between the media industry largely and the kind of AI and tech industry to license large quantities of content that are being used to train these tools. So the answer is, it depends, and we don't always know. And whether consensus, I haven't looked at the terms of service, but I'm to see what the licensing arrangement is and the content that they've ingested. But increasingly, I will say that if you get government funding, you are required to open up the products you create with that government funding if you're getting NSF or NIH grants, et cetera. So there's a lot of sources of open articles. There are open repositories of journal articles like Archive, AR, XIV in physics, and then there's SOC Archive for social sciences and BioArchive for biology. So a lot of disciplines have an archive repository. Those are all open source article preprints, and they are freely available for sharing.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions or reactions? And I want to see people, please do use the chat. And if you are using these tools, please do share how you're using them in terms of content creation. But they are very, very good for drafting, redrafting, editing, etc. And I'll go forward to talk a little bit about now the analysis element of things, because I think this is what's even more exciting. And the analogy that I use here to help us understand the difference is what your phone is doing with your pictures. So when your phone says to you, hey, would you like to see all those pictures of your summer vacation? Or would you like to see all the pictures of your cat or your kid? Or maybe it's prompted you like, would you like an album of all of your museum trips? It is able to go through all of your photos, very large quantity of data, without being told ahead of time. It recognizes your cat and it pulls them together, in an album and suggests it to you. So the ones that are summer 21 are easy because it knows what the date is of the pictures. I'm talking about those albums that it creates for you, where you didn't tell it what you're looking for ahead of time. And that's the idea here with this ability to look at large quantities of data without knowing what to look for ahead of time, pull data across a number of sources. And here is ChatGPT doing the same Buenos Aires restaurant search, looking at many different sources and websites, searching through information to try to analyze and extract from it an answer to the question that you're asking for, and is now going to, again, tell us a set of restaurants that are recommended. But it's really doing more than just going to one source. It's going to a whole bunch of sources
person actually runs
and doing
that,
analysis.
That group with the state that I was trying to get a job with. She's giving a...
Oops, I think we have a mute issue, or are you trying to jump in? I'm not sure.
I just muted the participant.
Okay, if you were trying to say something here as opposed to on the phone, by all means, chime back in. But that will give us some idea here. I mentioned before the idea of writing code. These tools are also really good at analyzing code, and it's being used by governments increasingly. This is an article from Fortune magazine that makes exactly this point, to look at existing code, especially that legacy computer code that underlies a lot of our government systems that are built in COBOL, a programming language that was created in 1959, looking at that code and helping us to rewrite and write new code, spot the problems, identify opportunities for fixes. That's really very, very powerful. It can do things like analyze text. And this is just an example of an article from the field of, it says here, empirical legal studies, a whole new field that has emerged, also called legal informatics, of people who are essentially taking legal documents, policy documents, ingesting them, and then using that to do research and to do analysis. In this case, this is an example of research. This is just an example about, legal research using AI. This is the one I wanted to show you, though. These are two researchers who ingested the data from, and in this case, the data is text, of oral arguments at the Supreme Court and did the analysis, asked it, tell us about how many times justices are interrupting. And they discovered that, will not surprise you, that male Supreme Court justices ended up interrupting female Supreme Court justices quite a bit. That led in 2021 to a change in the rules at the Supreme Court, whereby they said, we're now going to have justices ask questions in the order of seniority, instead of just having to be a free-for-all, because female justices couldn't get a word in edgewise. They now ask questions in order of seniority. Now the problem is, and this is some new research, the male Supreme Court justices are interrupting the female lawyers quite a bit, which again is something that will have to be addressed as a result, but it's able to be very helpful with recognizing discrimination, recognizing bias, because it's able to do the analysis of the content and say, hey, we can spot bias here, we can spot discrimination. The analysis of content is also becoming increasingly useful for summarization and transcription. So a number of people here have otter pilots or woodpeckers or other small furry AI animals doing the work of transcribing what we're saying, but more importantly, then rapidly summarizing, here are the points that were made in this conversation, here are the action items, and as you'll notice, doing this kind of analysis, this conversation is embarrassing because it says I spoke 62% of the time and the other speaker spoke 38% of the time. That's a great piece of analysis that's useful for self-reflection. I promise there was a reason I did all the talking in this particular conversation, but it's very helpful at doing analysis of the content, not just creation of the content. That can be very, very helpful for issue spotting. So I can upload a policy, I can upload a document and say, tell me what are those key, what are the errors in this document? What are the things we've forgotten to cover in this contract? What's unclear in here? I gave you that example before from the Supreme Court transcripts about the abortion examples. It's analyzing content, not just generating it, which can be extraordinarily helpful, again, for putting in a text. Maybe something you've drafted, a memo for your boss. Maybe it's a draft of a policy or an executive order. Maybe it's a speech. And not just saying, how can I improve the quality of the writing, but where have I actually made mistakes here? Where are there actually problems? Where are there errors that I might need to fix, because it's able to do the analysis. So here is, again, an example just using another interface, just so you can see what Claude looks like. From Anthropic, which is particularly good at doing working with PDFs, which we use a lot of in government. Another form of content analysis, and again, you could describe it as content creation or analysis. There's not a really hard and fast line between this. I just wanted to point out that there is this distinction, is translation. You're all familiar with Google Translate, is probably the most common. But there's now wonderful, more powerful new open source tools like Seamless M4T, which is created by Meta, what used to be called Facebook. It has created a translation engine that can now translate into and out of over 100 languages in text, and into and out of over 35 languages in spoken speech. And it can do speech to text and text to speech. And it's all open source and free, which means people can take it and build it into other tools, which opens up tremendous new opportunities in the area of translation and better service to residents who are non-English speaking. Okay, another addition that's new since we last talked about this, I mentioned already, I showed you Consensus as a third-party tool. Here's an image just of this, or a blog post that OpenAI did about this concept of the GPT. And this gets to the question we got asked earlier, which is ultimately what the GPT store is, and the ability now to build your own GPT. And I'm going to show you this on the next slide here. Here's what the screen looks like. This is one where, again, I'm going and looking for one that already exists in this store. But I can also build my own. Let me show you the Let me show you what that looks like first, and depending on timing, we'll do a live demo of that maybe in a minute, or I'll come back to that. So this is the GPT builder. So I can say I want to create my own, and it asks me, it walks me through the process of saying, what would you like to make? And it will ask you, which sources of information would you like me to use? I'm going to show you another example of that from another maker, another company, that I think will be very helpful. This one is called Notebook LM. This is notebooklm.google.com. And it is designed exactly for that. You go to notebooklm.google.com, you give it a title, and you say, these are the documents I would like you to pull from. So again, another kid example. The test this time was Shakespeare's comedies. They all exist online. We pasted in all the Shakespeare comedies and said, now, write me quiz questions based only on those. Or I want to ask you about examples across Shakespeare's comedies. Tell me about this motif or this metaphor or whatever he was working on in English class. So increasingly, the tools offer the ability, including very simple, and free opportunities to constrain the informational sources that it's pulling from. So I can say, only give answers from these policy documents from our agency, from these websites from our agency, that dramatically reduce the risks of hallucination and of errors, because it's only pulling from a limited universe of information. And again, increasingly, this is not fancy stuff for which you need to hire programmers or pay lots of money to vendors. You can go on Notebook LM and do this for yourself right now. You can go on ChatGPT and do this for yourself right now. You can go on Google Gemini, etc., and do these things for yourself right now, and tell it exactly the sources of information that you want it to use. Okay, before I go, I'm going to pause here for a second, just see if there are any comments or questions. We have a lot of time now for questions.
We have a lot of comments. It's excellent engagement in the chat and lots of questions, but I think I'll keep them to the end. There's nothing immediate that I think we need to address right now, but I just see that Francisco Guerrero raised his hand. Francisco, would you like to come off of mute?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Beth. You have covered a wide range of topics in this time. It's unbelievable how you have synthesized all this. It's very helpful. So one of the issues that I'm having with creating my own GPT models is that probably there's a stuff to do in the design. And I think somebody mentioned that there's be training about that. But when I try to do some analysis with my own GPT, the performance is lower compared when I just assign the task to the general GPT. So I don't know how to. I wonder if you're going to have you have some ideas about how to fine tune them, and also for Hannah, is there specific training? I didn't see anything on the list about creating GPT models as part of the series. Thank you very much.
Hannah, did you want to first mention the OpenAI trainings that are coming up?
Yes, I could just jump in to quickly say that on February 7th, we have a workshop with OpenAI as part of our industry series, and they're going to be covering GPTs and how to build custom GPTs for the public sector with no coding required. So I already put that in the chat earlier on, but I'll put it back again so people can feel free to sign up for that. But thank you for the question, Francisco, and over to Beth.
And I will just say on a related note, if there are things you would like to see training around or specific questions you have, please do put that in the chat. If you label it Hannah or I'd like a workshop on, we'd love to know that. And also, Hannah, to the extent to which we have questions that can turn into workshops, we're very happy to provide more guidance and more content. Let me come back to the question about speed and also see if there are other people who want to answer that question even better than I do. So one issue has to do with whether you're using the paid or the free version of these tools. They tend to be much faster if you're using the paid version, which is a broader concern about the future of these tools and the digital divide that we're going to be creating. with them, but there is some concern about, as you saw when we demoed Consensus, you know, it was hanging there for quite some time. The second time we obviously tried something, it was a lot faster. So the free versus the paid makes a difference. It just can matter the time of day. And obviously it's going to be a big difference about whether you're using these tools for a kind of internal purpose, where maybe that uptime and reliability and how long you have to wait doesn't matter so much. If what you're doing is providing a chatbot to residents with answers to their questions about their benefits, we can't have it hanging like that. So there will be a need for more managed hosted services that have, you know, the appropriate uptime and reliability, to ensure that we're providing better response times to people. And I think some of that, you know, is still evolving, but for certain purposes, again, the wait may or may not be such a crisis, depending on what we're trying to do. That said, as between somebody have to going into a government office 9 to 5 and drive there, versus providing a slower response but 24/7, and the addition of a please bear with us, this is sometimes a little slow. I do think that we have to always, you know, balance, you know, what are the trade-offs? What are, you know, yes, we'd like a faster experience, but if we can give people that information 24/7, it's going to be a lot better than what they had before. And to that end, I want to show you a specific example of exactly that point on the next slide. So bear with me while I just jump forward one slide, to show some additional use cases, and then I want to show you exactly that point that I think responds to that. So there's a great report that came out just 2 months ago. We'll put a link to this in the chat, from the state of California, and it very nicely offers, which I'm going to reprint some of here, a number of different ideas for things you can do. So they have a list of, here's our list of use cases of generative AI. Use cases is just tech speak for examples. Here are the kinds of things we can do with it. And again, I think there's good chatter going on in the chat where people are talking about the kinds of uses that they are using it for. So in New Jersey, for example, I've mentioned using generative AI to get better at writing responses that then go into a chatbot, get better and faster at writing responses that then get used by a call center. The faster we can write responses, the faster we can upload them to a phone tree, so that we can not only provide customer service to people, but provide more customized customer service in response to what people are actually asking for. This ability to analyze information and to analyze data, you know, you can upload a data set, you can upload numbers to it, can help to do all kinds of, again, analysis tasks that before you might have needed someone more technically trained or a data scientist, and they can be hard to come by, that you might have needed somebody to help you with, that now the tools can increasingly help you with. Translation here as the example that's mentioned, that ability to create forms and websites and other things in multiple languages, dramatically improving and enhancing accessibility, and enhancing how we do things. So I'll leave this up here for a second just so you can see it. And again, share more of your own examples in the chat of either how you're using these tools or would like to use them. And now I want to show you another example that also responds to Francisco's question, which is an example. I'll just do this one. It's a project that actually students of mine are working on, which we call AI EP. So for those of you in the education space or who have kids with an IEP, you'll know it's called an individualized education plan. 15 to 20% of all kids have a customized plan designed to respond to the specific disabilities and needs that they have. That IEP that school districts give to kids is often a 50 to 100-page PDF that outlines what benefits you're entitled to. That can be a very, very complex document for anyone to understand, but especially for someone who is low literacy or who is non-native English speaking. So the tool that they are building, this is not an example of the tool, this is an example of the form, and we'd love to show the tool at another point for those who are interested, essentially allows a parent to upload their IEP and it creates a chatbot out of it. So then it, number one, translates it. Number two, summarizes it. And number three, offers the chatbot functionality. So you can say, tell me what are the benefits my kid is entitled to. Tell me what the services are that I'm getting. You can ask questions of the document. Instead of having to read 100 pages, you can actually do that kind of conversation with a document. This is back to Francisco's point. Is it fast at the moment? No, it's not fast. The upload takes a while. We're working on that. But as between having to wait a little bit and what parents have now, which is often nothing, no help, no resources, no translation, no help with such an important thing, sometimes the waiting isn't so bad given the alternative. But meanwhile, we're getting better at the upload times and speeds, and we've already cut the time in half this week, thanks to some improvements that were made. So let me pause there, see what questions people have.
We have so many questions. I really appreciate everyone's interest. Oh, Beth, but you're on mute.
I'm going to unmute. It has to happen at least once. I'm going to turn off the screen share and let's go to questions.
Okay, excellent. Let me just stop recording.